Have you ever noticed how some people seem immune to the emotional drama that destroys most of us? While you explode over small things, lose sleep over arguments, or make terrible decisions when emotionally charged, there's an emotional elite who have turned these very situations into fuel for growth and strategic advantage. Here's the truth no one wants to admit. You're being manipulated by your own emotions every day. That road rage, that anxiety before important meetings, that frustration with incompetent people, these aren't just fleeting feelings. They're forces that are literally controlling your decisions, sabotaging your relationships, and wasting your most precious mental energy. But there's a select group of people who've discovered something revolutionary. Your emotional triggers aren't your enemies, they're valuable data about how your internal system works. These people have learned to perform an emotional alchemy that seems almost magical. They take the same anger, anxiety, and frustration that paralyzes everyone else and transform it into clarity, personal power, and a competitive advantage. What I'm going to show you today goes against everything you've learned about emotional control. Prepare to discover why trying to suppress your emotions is the most destructive strategy possible, why your most intense reactions carry life-changing information, and how people you secretly admire use what should be weakness as their greatest source of strength. Most people live convinced they know their own emotional triggers, but this is one of the most dangerous illusions of superficial self-knowledge. They believe they know exactly what irritates them. Traffic, criticism, people being late, political arguments, but this is just the surface, the tip of the emotional iceberg. The real trigger is rarely the event itself, but rather the meaning we attribute to it, the unhealed wounds it touches, or the unmet needs it exposes. It's like mistaking the symptom for the disease. You treat the fever, but ignore the infection. When someone finally understands that their road rage isn't about the traffic, but about their need for control, being frustrated, then true emotional transformation begins. Ignoring your emotional triggers is like driving a sports car with the handbrake on. You might be able to move, but you waste a tremendous amount of energy and never reach your true potential. Every time you're hijacked by an intense emotional reaction, you're literally handing over control of your life to external circumstances. It's fascinating how highly successful people in other fields can become completely dysfunctional when their triggers are activated. A CEO commanding millions can turn into a tantrum-throwing child when someone questions their authority. A highly organized person can panic when their plans are changed. This waste of emotional energy isn't just inconvenience, it's literally internal sabotage in action. Here's an exercise that will reveal uncomfortable truths about yourself for the next few days. Every time you feel an intense emotional reaction, stop and ask yourself 3 questions. First, what exactly is bothering me here, the event itself or what it represents to me? Second, what need of mine is not being met in this situation? And third, when was the first time I felt this way in my life? You'll discover eerily consistent patterns. You might discover that your anger with incompetent people at work is actually your need for recognition being ignored, or that your social anxiety masks a deep-seated fear of rejection stemming from childhood. These insights aren't just interesting, they're the raw material for a revolutionary emotional transformation. There's a microscopic window of opportunity between the moment something angers you and the moment you react, and that 5-second window can literally change the course of your life. Modern neuroscience has proven that there's a neurological gap between stimulus and response, a sacred space where your freedom of choice resides. The problem is, most people have never learned to identify and seize this crucial pause. It's like having a superpower you don't know you possess. When you can consciously create that 5-second space, you step out of emotional autopilot and take control of the situation. Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl said that between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space lies our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. The anger you feel when someone cuts you off in traffic is rarely about the traffic. It's about something much deeper that the situation has awakened within you. When you learn to go beyond superficial irritation and genuinely investigate the root of your discomfort, you uncover emotional territories you never knew existed. Perhaps that anger is actually a feeling of disrespect, connecting with an old wound of feeling unappreciated. Or perhaps it's disguised anxiety, because you're afraid of being late and disappointing someone important. This emotional archaeology isn't just interesting, it's liberating. When you understand what's really going on inside you, you can address the root cause instead of just treating the symptoms. It's the difference between taking a painkiller for a headache and discovering you need glasses. The impulse to react immediately is like an addicted muscle that has been trained for years to respond automatically, but you can retrain it to become a source of wisdom instead of chaos. Every time you feel that familiar wave of irritation, anger, or anxiety rising, you have a revolutionary choice. Instead of letting the emotion hijack you, you can use it as a signal that something important is trying to communicate with you. It's like turning an annoying alarm into a sophisticated navigation system. When you make this mental shift from seeing intense emotions as problems to seeing them as valuable information, you literally reprogram your relationship with your own suffering. Every trigger becomes an opportunity for self-discovery. Every intense reaction becomes an invitation to grow. You stop being a victim of your emotions and become a scientist studying the patterns of your own psyche. Reframing is perhaps the most powerful tool of emotional intelligence, acting like a magical lens that transforms obstacles into strategic opportunities. When you can look at a situation that would normally irritate you and think, interesting, what can this teach me? Instead of, damn, why does this always happen to me? You literally change your brain chemistry. It's like being an emotional alchemist. You take the lead of your frustrations and transform it into the gold of personal growth. Extremely resilient people don't feel less pain, they simply become masters at extracting value from difficult situations. When Steve Jobs was fired from the very company he founded, he could have wallowed in bitterness, but he chose to see it as an opportunity to start over with more wisdom, and the rest is history. There are specific techniques that transform intense emotional energy into fuel for constructive action, and most people have never learned even one of them. Emotional journaling isn't just writing "I'm angry," it's a process of deep investigation, where you question your emotions like a detective would question suspects. Write down exactly what happened, what you felt, why you believe you felt that way, and what constructive action you can take with that information. Proactive communication means confronting difficult situations before they explode, using your anger as a signal that an important conversation needs to happen. And physical release, whether by running, fighting a punching bag, or even yelling in the car, transforms destructive energy into healthy release. These aren't esoteric techniques. They're practical tools that work because they respect how our nervous systems actually operate. I know an executive who used to explode in meetings whenever his projects were questioned, until he learned to use that anger as a barometer of how passionate he was about his ideas. Instead of exploding, he began to pause and think. My intense reaction means this is really important to me. How can I communicate this passion productively? He turned his reactivity into a competitive advantage. His presentations became more convincing because he channeled his emotional intensity into powerful arguments. Another person I know transformed her social anxiety into exceptional listening skills. She realized that her tendency to stay quiet in groups out of fear of judgment actually made her the person others opened up to the most. She stopped seeing her introversion as a weakness and started using it as a relational superpower. These examples demonstrate something crucial. Your perceived flaws can become your greatest strengths when you learn to work with your nature rather than against it. The pre-trigger routine is like having a strengthened emotional immune system that protects you before difficult situations even rise. Just as you don't wait until you're sick to start taking care of your health, you shouldn't wait until you're emotionally devastated to develop psychological resilience. People who are rarely knocked down by emotional crises have something in common. They invest daily in practices that strengthen their internal stability when everything is calm. This could be morning meditation, regular exercise, time for reflection, or even visualizing challenging scenarios and how they would handle them. It's like training for a marathon. When race day arrives, your body is already prepared. The difference is that here you're training your nervous system to remain centered under pressure. so as not to be hijacked by intense emotions when they inevitably arise. Self-care and personal boundaries aren't luxuries or treats, they're emotional survival tools that determine whether you thrive or merely survive the pressures of modern life. A person who can't say no is constantly operating beyond their emotional capacity, like a cell phone that's always on red. When you're emotionally drained, any minor irritation becomes a disproportionate catastrophe. On the other hand, when you maintain adequate emotional energy levels through adequate rest, nourishing food, energizing relationships, and restorative activities, you have the emotional reserve to handle the unexpected. It's amazing how people who seem dramatic or unstable become pillars of serenity when they finally learn to protect and regularly restore their emotional energy. Limits aren't selfish. They're preventative maintenance of your ability to be useful to yourself and others. Your emotional first aid kit should be as well stocked as your home pharmacy, because emotional emergencies are as real and urgent as physical emergencies. When you feel like you're losing control, you need immediate, practical tools, a breathing technique you've practiced 1,000 times that works automatically, a mental list of 3 things you're genuinely grateful for, a specific person you can call who brings you back to center, or even a playlist that shifts your emotional state in minutes. Some people have an emergency mantra, a powerful phrase that reconnects them with their inner strength. Others have a physical ritual, washing their face with cold water, doing 10 push-ups, or going for a 5-minute walk. The important thing is that these tools are tested and personalized for you, like specific medications for your unique needs. When the emotional storm hits sand at will, you won't be frantically searching for solutions. You'll have a proven arsenal of strategies that are already part of who you are. When you finally understand your own emotional patterns, you develop a kind of emotional radar that can detect the triggers and needs of others with surgical precision. It's as if you've learned a secret language that most people speak but don't know they're speaking. You recognize when someone is being defensive because they feel undervalued, when they're being aggressive because they feel threatened, or when they're being passive-aggressive because they don't know how to express their needs directly. This awareness isn't for manipulation, it's for navigating relationships with more compassion and effectiveness. Daniel Goleman, a pioneer in the study of emotional intelligence, showed that exceptional leaders aren't necessarily the most technically intelligent, but rather those who can read and positively influence the emotional climate around them. They use their self-awareness as a compass to understand and connect with others. Emotional awareness becomes a devastating competitive advantage in decision-making, because you stop being hijacked by unconscious impulses that sabotage your best interests. Most people make important decisions when they're angry, fearful, anxious, or euphoric states that completely distort our perception of reality. When you develop the ability to recognize your emotional state and how it's influencing your judgment, you can pause and choose the right moment for important decisions. I've known executives who saved their companies simply by learning not to make decisions. When they were emotionally upset, they developed the habit of saying, "Let me process this and I'll get back to you tomorrow," a simple phrase that protected them from impulsive decisions that could cost millions. In personal life, this means not texting when angry, not making promises when euphoric, and not making life decisions when depressed. The quantum leap happens when you evolve from someone who merely reacts to emotions to someone who consciously designs their emotional states and environments to achieve their goals. You become a designer of your own emotional experience, actively choosing what energy you want to cultivate and what kind of person you want to be in each situation. This means planning your emotional energy like you plan your schedule. Knowing you'll need more patience for that difficult meeting, you meditate beforehand. Knowing you'll need creativity for that project, you create the environmental conditions that inspire you. Knowing you'll need courage for that important conversation, you prepare yourself mentally and physically. You stop being a supporting character in your own life and become the director, screenwriter, and protagonist. It's not about controlling everything, it's about responding consciously instead of reacting automatically. It's about using your emotions as fuel for your evolution, not as an excuse for stagnation. Now you have access to something most people will spend their entire lives without discovering. the secret map to transforming your most destructive emotional reactions into the most powerful tools in your personal arsenal. But here's the brutal reality. You can have all the techniques in the world, all the deepest insights into your triggers, but if you don't apply them in real life, you'll continue to be held hostage by the same emotional outbursts, the same impulsive decisions, the same self-destructive cycles that have kept you stagnant. So answer me honestly, what will be the first situation where you'll test this emotional alchemy? Will it be that recurring argument with your partner that always ends in war? That coworker who can get you worked up with a simple look? Or perhaps that anxiety that paralyzes you before important opportunities? And most crucially, are you prepared to stop using your emotions as an excuse not to evolve and start using them as fuel to become who you truly can be? The difference between people who transform their lives and those who merely consume transformation content lies in a single choice: the courage to apply what they've learned when it's hard, when it's uncomfortable, when every fiber of their being wants to revert to old patterns. Because it's easy to be an emotional architect when everything is calm. The real test is when you're in the eye of the storm and still choose to respond consciously instead of reacting automatically. Every day you postpone this transformation is another day wasting the potential that lies within your own emotional reactions. Your emotions are trying to teach you something crucial about who you are and what you need. The question is whether you'll finally stop and listen. If this video awakened you to a new relationship with your own emotions, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. See you in the next video.